Effective altruism is a movement dedicated to donating your money effectively, originally championed in the academic essay Famine, Affluence and Morality. With these academic beginnings, it was no surprise that the people who championed its cause were also primarily from academic circles. And these academics done what academics do all too often: think. And this thinking brought them to one major question: what about future people? With this question, Longtermism was born. One of the main points of Longtermism is that the future is big. But how big? Well, with each of these figures representing 10 billion people, here's every person who's ever existed, present and past. Now let's compare this to every future person that could exist. Assuming our population plateaued at this current size, and we happen to last as long as the typical mammalian species, there are 80 trillion people yet to come, or this many figures. Each of them representing 10 billion people, each with lives yet to be lived. With the immense amount of possible future people, academics began to question if their time, expertise and resources better not be spent on them. After all, they had no representation among decision makers, they couldn't vote or lobby, and so they had no voice, yet they would be affected by the decisions made today. Now of course the other point is our population could increase, exponentially if we expand beyond our own planetary system. Furthermore, with human intelligence and technology we could live well beyond that of a typical mammalian species, potentially until the heat death of the universe, perhaps even beyond. This increases the number of future people by unimaginable proportions, lending greater weight to the mission of long-termists. Yet the same technology could cut our existence short, ending the potential of every future life forever, and this is where the first focus of long-termism began: existential risks. In the book The Precipice, Toby Ord outlined these various risks, quantifying their likelihood of ending humanity. He explored natural events such as asteroid impacts, but found their potential of ending humanity to be 1 in 10,000 in the next 100 years. Human-made risks were much more bleak, with nuclear war and climate change being 1 in 1,000, engineered pandemics being 1 in 30, and unaligned artificial intelligence being 1 in 10. Overall, he gave humanity a 1 in 6 chance of existential catastrophe in the next 100 years. A dice roll. This is where long-termists can come in, pushing the importance of various risks to the forefront of debate, using their expertise to help mitigate or stop some of these potential crises, or even donate to an organisation or person that can. Another aspect of long-termism is preventing value lock-in. When we look back to the values of the 1900s, we can't help but judge them. From the treatment of women, extraction of wealth in the colonies, and the criminalisation of the LGBTQ community, it all seems abhorrent. Now imagine if value lock-in had occurred during these times, such as through the victory of the German Reich. Imagine if our values had failed to change. It would be a nightmare. Equally, we must fight against value lock-in now, as it seems a bit insane to think that our current values are perfect and ready to be baked into humanity for the rest of time. Examples of where the future generations may judge us could include consumption of meat, entrenchment of capitalism, and the gender binary. Long-termists conclude that we must build a morally exploratory world, structured so that over time the norms and institutions that are morally better and more likely to win out. Key long-termist William Maskell suggested trialling different ideologies in charter cities, semi-independent zones similar to Hong Kong, whose laws can differ drastically from their host nation. The final area of long-termism we're going to cover is population ethics, the core of which claims it is a good thing to make happy people. If you can have a baby and said baby lives a happy life, that is a morally good thing. One view of population ethics is called the average view, which asserts that it is important to increase a population's average well-being. This seems intuitive until you realise that adding unhappy people can be a good thing according to this view. Let's say that your population has 1 million people at minus 100 happiness. They were facing unimaginable torture perpetually. According to the average view, it would be moral to add 10 million people with minus 99 happiness, as it would bring up the total average. These 10 million people would still face unimaginable torture, but the total population would be on average better. The second view is the total view, which simply believes it is more good to add more good lives, but it is also plagued with issues. Consider two worlds, one titled Big and Flourishing and the second titled Enormous and Drab. Big and Flourishing contains 10 billion people at extremely high levels of well-being, whereas Enormous and Drab has an extraordinarily large number of people, but everyone has only slightly positive well-being. If the total view is correct, then as long as the number of people in the second world is large enough, we must conclude that it is better than the first. Long-termists call this the repugnant conclusion. There are other views, but each suffers from its own issues and each is more complicated than the last. This brings us to the main problem with long-termism. It has went beyond rational thinking and into the realm of abstract what-ifs. Effective altruism was meant to be about using your money in an effective way. Equally, it was about encouraging others to do the same and making the process of doing so simpler. Long-termism lacks this practicality entirely and is drenched in academic rabbit holes that seems to lead nowhere. Equally, it is plagued with issues. For example, what are the implications of population ethics on the morality of birth control and abortion? It seems as though it would consider them wrong. Furthermore, a morally exploratory world could encourage and empower some very awful moral values. Beyond this, the steps in creating a morally exploratory world are not understood or established. It is once again an abstract. Finally, I want to assert that long-termism and effective altruism are important to understand, as these are the ideologies of our elites. Billionaires like Musk buy heavily into long-termism, repeatedly pressing the issue of low birth rates and asserting the moral justness of having more children. Furthermore, he bought Twitter in the name of protecting free speech, a cause very reminiscent of the debate around value lock-in. Most importantly, major prestigious universities around the world have an effective altruist movement. From these universities will come the future decision makers and agenda setters, the CEOs, politicians, journalists, editors, and senior civil servants, many of which will have bought into these ideologies during their time at university. Ultimately, effective altruism and potentially long-termism will rule over us in the form of our decision makers. Therefore, we must know more about it. For more information on long-termism, I would recommend reading What We Are the Future by William Maskell. For more information on effective altruism, you can watch my previous video. Thanks for watching, and feel free to like and subscribe.